So this is the part where we expose the organism's central nervous system, the narrative engine. This is the darkest layer so far, because it reveals just how truth becomes irrelevant and how perception is weaponized and how the system manufactures reality through coordinated psychological architecture. This is the chapter the institution would burn if it could. We go deeper, colder, more existential. This is the dissection of the institutional storytelling as survival strategy, the narrative engine, how the family court manufactures reality it can control. By the time the parent reaches the family court, they still believe something naive. That is, the truth matters. The facts carry weight. The evidence will save them. The professionals will correct each other. That contradictions will be exposed. That logic will prevail. None of this is true. None of it. Not because the system is broken, because it's not, but because the system doesn't run on truth at all. It runs on narrative. Narrative is its oxygen, its authority, its camouflage, its weapon, its theology. If the family court loses control of the narrative, it loses control of the case. And if it loses control of the case, it loses control of the institution. So if the organism constructs reality the same way totalitarian regimes do, then through controlled storytelling masquerading as objective assessment. Now let's dissect the machinery. So because the premises, right? This is their premises, right? Our interpretation counts. Before anything happens, the organism establishes a foundational doctrine. Professionals generate truth. Parents generate noise. This doctrine is not explicit, it's implicit, embedded in every interaction. The moment you walk into the system, your perspective becomes unreliable, emotional, self-serving, biased, minimizing, exaggerating, manipulative, unstable. And that's before you've even spoken a word. You are pre-discredited. This is the first cog in the narrative engine. Only the institutional voices are considered real. So only the professionals will take in seriously or anything they say carries any weight. Everything else is commentary. Number 2, the first draft. Assumptions as seeds. Narrative does not begin with evidence at all. It begins with assumption. A CAFCASS officer or a social worker forms an impression of you within the first 5 to 15 minutes. Who you are, what type you are, where the risk sits, how the story will unfold. These assumptions are not trivial. They are genetic code of the narrative. Once written, they are nearly impossible to overwrite because the organism builds every subsequent interpretation on that first draft. If the first draft casts you as the problem, every new action you take becomes evidence of the assumption. Narrative precedes data. Narrative shapes data. Narrative consumes data. 3, the echo chamber, the professional synchronization. The second cog in the engine is synchronization. The organism cannot tolerate internal disagreement. Disagreement creates openings for accountability, appeals, delays, exposure, alternative interruptions. So professionals naturally align around the first narrative ceded to the case, not because they're conspiring, but because institutional organisms value consensus over truth. Consensus feels safe. Truth feels risky. This is why social workers echo CAFCASS. Psychologists anchor their assessments to previous opinions. Judges favor professional consensus. Contradictions are smoothed out over time. Dissenting voices go silent. The narrative tightens. Number 4, the narrative hardening. Fiction becoming fact. Once professionals have aligned, the narrative enters its next evolution. Fiction becomes fact through repetition. A concern stated once as a suspicion. A concern stated twice is a pattern. A concern stated 3 times is evidence. A concern stated 4 times is truth. A concern stated 5 times is judicial fact. No additional proof required. Repetition is the alchemy. This is why the organisms recycle the same phrases. There are concerns. There appears to be a pattern. It has been noted that professional observations indicate the court remains concerned. These sentences do not describe reality. They produce it. The narrative shield. Number 5, why contradictions don't matter. You assume contradictions will expose the system. They won't. The narrative doesn't collapse because it contradicts itself. It adapts. When evidence disproves the narrative, the organism does not correct the narrative. It recasts the evidence. Evidence is never accepted on its own terms. It is absorbed, reframed, or dismissed based on whether it strengthens or tightens the story. For example, your calmness becomes calculated, your rationality becomes controlling, your cooperation becomes superficial, your confusion becomes evasive, your emotional reaction becomes instability. Everything can be reinterpreted, anything. This is not incompetence, this is narrative, preservation, the narrative lock, when the story becomes irreversible. Eventually, the narrative becomes a closed loop, not because it's true, but because it's established. Once established, new evidence is irrelevant. Old evidence is selectively recalled. Professional memory becomes narrative memory. Inconsistencies are erased retroactively. The judge defers to professional consensus. Your outcome is predetermined. This is the moment most parents feel something they cannot articulate. That is, it doesn't matter what I do anymore. They're right. I'm not paranoid. They're not imagining it. They are witnessing the narrative lock. Once the organism finalizes its story, the role becomes administrative. You are no longer part of the legal process. You are inside a ritual, and the ritual only ends when the organism has achieved the outcome that it's protected itself for. Number 7, the narrative export. Turning your case into institutional myth. Here's the darkest part. The organism doesn't just create narratives for your case. No, it harvests your case to reinforce its mythology. Your suffering becomes a data point. Your collapse becomes an institutional evidence. Your breakdown becomes training material. Your compliance becomes precedent. Your silence becomes doctrine. Your defeat becomes the institution's self-justification. Your story doesn't disappear. It becomes absorbed into the organism's body, strengthening it for the next case. This is the most brutal truth. Parents don't lose in family court. Parents are consumed by it.